All right, everyone. Welcome and thank you for coming to the Thriving Communities Grant info session for the 2026 award round. We're really thrilled to have you here. My name is Claire Healy, and I am the Partner Grants Network Manager. It's important to the food bank to acknowledge that we are living and working on ancestral and occupied lands of various Tohono O'odham and Yaqui communities. Um, Having a land acknowledgement is an important piece of our work, but we recognize that it's just one small piece, and it's important to pair that with action. The food bank is very honored to be partners with tribal communities through the Thriving Communities Grant, as well as other outlets and projects. We have the pleasure of focusing on things such as land stewardship, food sovereignty, access to fresh local foods in rural areas, community health, and more. Before we dive into the details of the Thriving Communities Grant, I do want to make you aware of an upcoming training put on by colleagues in the policy and advocacy team. It is a 2-day training in person here at the food bank. Breakfast and lunch will be provided, and it's all about civic engagement and how you can have your voice heard and become more active in the anti-hunger space. They'll be focusing on strategies such as power mapping, also storytelling to initiate systems change. Storytelling is also a great thing to think about when applying for a grant as well, so it applies in many areas of life. And they'll also be giving updates pertaining to anti-hunger and food systems policy happening locally, statewide, and federally. So feel free to share this with anyone who may be interested. You should be able, I'm using your smartphone to open the camera. And if you scan the QR code rather, it should pull up the registration form for you. If you're having any trouble with that, just let me know, and I'm happy to also email out this flyer or the registration form. And if you have questions specifically for that, there's a contact at the bottom. You can reach out to Diane. Again, you can also reach out to me through partnergrants@communityfoodbank.org, and I'm happy to answer questions I can or connect you with Diane. All right, so hopping into the agenda for today, we're going to be talking about who is an eligible applicant and what projects is the food bank looking to fund this year, what's our high priority, and what makes up a strong application. We're also going to be sharing a note on stewardship of resources, the funding amounts being offered for the grants this year, the process timeline, and then we'll open it up to your questions. We're hoping that the slides themselves answer a lot of questions, but anything that we're missing, rest assured we'll have lots of time for any questions you have at the end. I'm not able to see the chat right now because I'm screen sharing, but feel free if you just want to have a reminder to yourself about a question you might have, pop anything that's coming up for you in the chat at any time, and we will get to it. All right, so when we're talking eligibility, generally speaking, whether your group is a nonprofit, a mutual aid group, a small school or church, if you're working in our service area and you have a budget under $1 million, you're likely eligible. The food bank works in Cochise, Graham, Greenlee, Pima, and Santa Cruz counties. And then for those who aren't nonprofit groups, we offer fiscal sponsorship sponsorship through Avanzando LLC with the food bank. We also accept fiscal sponsors that are other nonprofit entities, and the purpose of fiscal sponsorship is to reduce barriers for more grassroots groups for receiving funding from nonprofits. Um, there is limited capacity within Avanzando. So we do ask if you are a grassroots group and you have connections already, maybe collaboration with other existing nonprofits, potentially reach out to them to see would they be interested in a fiscal sponsorship relationship should you be funded. Um, and if you don't have those connections yet, please do feel free to ask for Avanzando to be a fiscal sponsor. That's something that is indicated on the application itself. Some notes about fiscal sponsorship. It's very common, almost across the board, that an organization will charge a fiscal sponsorship fee because it is taking staff time. You're having to initiate transactions. They're managing some funds. They're sending out tax forms as applicable at the end of the year. So it ranges based on the organization, but typically we'll see anywhere up to 10% of a project budget for the fiscal sponsorship fee. Avanzando charges a 5% fiscal sponsorship fee. So again, kind of trying to reduce the barriers, but also acknowledge some of the capacity that goes into that role. And then a big piece of it as well is that we are looking to support smaller groups doing great aligned work within Southern Arizona that are not a part of a rich and more better resourced network. So that is why we only accept applications for groups operating under $1 million annually. This can feel a bit tricky if, say, you are part of a university or a school district, maybe a large church network or a national nonprofit. So, if you're not sure, a really simple way of confirming is when you think about if you are a nonprofit, this only applies to nonprofits. And you are going to upload your IRS tax determination letter. Whoever's organization name is listed on that tax exempt letter, that needs to be an organization with a budget under $1 million. So universities, large school districts, say here in Tucson at least, some church networks and national nonprofits will not be eligible. And we know that this is tricky because you may be a part of a network, but you may be thinking, well, we don't have a budget of $1 million ourselves. And certainly we understand that. However, the idea is that we are really trying to open these funds up for folks who do not have this kind of support network that does typically yield more opportunity, more capacity for resource sharing or resource seeking. So we appreciate folks understanding that. And we also have other pathways that we may be able to collaborate for you, even if you aren't eligible to apply for the Thriving Communities Grant. And I will talk a bit about that later on in the slides. In that same realm of really wanting to support folks who have not had access to resources or as many resources, we are asking those who have received 3 or more Thriving Communities grants since the 2022 award round to please take a break from applying so there is more free space in the application process to really focus on those who have not received funding but are aligned with our work, and we would like to increase support for them. Speaking of priority funding, there are three main areas that highly align with the food bank's work that we are looking to fund this year. The first is projects that are strengthening the local food system. Then we also want to support projects that provide community education, particularly related to health, access to essential services, food production, and nutrition. And lastly, our third priority, not in numerical order, these are all equal priorities, but third priority is supporting emergency food distribution efforts. So think infrastructure improvements, capacity building, and dignified service delivery. I'm not sure why this little question mark icon is there, but it seems fitting that it's unknown since it's a question mark, but forgive that strange typo of sorts. I will give some examples of what this priority funding has looked like in the past. So for strengthening the local food system, there is a project in Cochise County, a very rural area, where grantees have established a local food co-op. They work with local farmers to source local produce. They accept Supplemental Nutrition Assistant Program or SNAP, as well as double up. So people are able to get twice the amount of local produce for the same amount of SNAP. And then they have since expanded to create a farm to school network. They have a goal of getting local produce into every single school in Cochise County. So really exciting. And before this, for some context too, it was about an hour round trip to get to a grocery store in this part of Cochise County. And that's if you have your own transportation. So they're really creating additional access and quite the food hub in that region. We've also funded projects that include sharing infrastructure and land for farming. They bring in new farmers as well as support existing farmers. And the idea is that they have that support. They're able to increase yields. They're able to share resources and therefore really reduce the costs of being a farmer. And then they're, participating in the local economy and also increasing the amount of local food that is available in our region. For community education projects, a good example is in Graham County, where community health workers and food pantries, as well as community centers, have come together to collaborate, offering health services as well as resources to additional health services, which maybe can't be done on site. So they'll do referrals and follow up while people are able to pick up food. And they also just help in guiding connection to other social services and making sure that when people come to get food, there's more of a wraparound service provided, which is also essential, particularly in rural areas where there may not be as many service providers. And lastly, for supporting emergency food distribution, you can think of things like replacing refrigerators or freezers that may have been broken. Maybe you need a new big freezer because you are receiving more frozen food. Also, capacity building, like investing in a volunteer or donations managing software, and then certainly capacity building for better serving a diverse audience and thinking about dignified service delivery for all. We also are a food bank member of the Feeding America network, and they have data mapping hunger across the US, specifically in our region, although it's not unique to us. This is a national trend. Their data illustrates that rural areas typically experience higher levels of food insecurity. So because of this, in addition to the types of projects that I just talked about that are our funding priorities, we will also be prioritizing funding to projects that are taking place outside of the Tucson metro area. This certainly doesn't mean that if you're working in Tucson, you can't or shouldn't apply and that you would not be considered for funding. It's just that we are hoping to pour more resources into the areas that the data shows have the most need. In terms of what the grant can fund, it's quite a wide array of activities and different tools. So, like I talked about, it can fund infrastructure, training, advocacy for programs, as well as community education. If you want to try a pilot project, something you haven't done before, but you're hearing from the community you serve that there's a need and an interest, this is a great avenue to explore that. And particularly, I think for those newer things, pilot projects, something like an evaluation can be really helpful to help you to track your impact. A strong application is going to be really clear about what the specific need is, then what your project goals are to address that need, and what you are trying to accomplish in addressing it. Additionally, we'll be looking for applicants to identify how project beneficiaries, so those you're looking to serve, how they are involved in the project design and implementation. We all know that it is really great to lean into that community knowledge. And when we're looking to serve people, it's best to have their voices truly represented in design, if not in implementation. But really, the more you can demonstrate that you are including and being guided from those who are the experts on their situation, the better. And then we will also hope for you to outline how the project's benefits will have a ripple effect. How will they continue after the initial investment? So, if you're looking to increase your volunteer numbers, maybe you're asking, for personnel to do that as well as maybe a program to help there and thinking about, in any case, whatever your project is, like how would this year's project create things that could be used in a sustainable way? So maybe that volunteer coordinator is creating training that you use every year, or recruitment, or the program, the database is creating tools that can be carried on, and so forth. So really thinking about how can you have the most impact in the funding year, but also how can you design your program or your project in ways that are thinking about impact even beyond that year. I want to talk about stewardship of resources. So the food bank, obviously, traditionally, a lot of folks think of food banking in general as being a food provider at heart, and maybe even just a food provider. At our food bank, we have a focus on both the emergency need, which we know is very severe, and we also are creating pathways and programs to try to get to the root cause of hunger as well. So while providing food to our partners, either for free or very low cost, is a very key piece of the food bank's work. It is a separate avenue from the Thriving Communities grant, which is seeking, again, to have more capacity building, sustainability building efforts. Um, and because we um, we are able to leverage the donations that the food bank gets, whether they be monetary or food. We have very large bulk buying power. We are able to get much, much more food for the people we need it through formal partnership with our food security team, compared to if we were to give grants for folks to individually buy food. They'd be missing out on that buying power that we are able to utilize to get things at really reduced rates that you just wouldn't see, say, in a grocery store or if you're buying more piecemeal. There is that silly question mark thing again. That was not on my slides before. So something has to go silly when we're doing a virtual meeting. All right. So, if food is your primary need, again, we have avenues to support with that. It is a major part of the work that we do. Some of you are already formal partners with the food security team, but if you are not and you are in need of food, we really encourage you to explore the opportunity. You can email the food security team at the address provided on this slide. If you are ready to fill out a form indicating your interest to become a partner, there's also this pretty short link. And if need this resent or anything, again, you can feel free to reach out to Partner Grants. It's also available on the Food Bank's website. So I have shared about how the Thriving Communities grant is not the avenue for food purchases. We also understand that sometimes there are deeply rooted capacity building, long-term kind of root cause projects that are not about specifically just food distribution in that they are, you're just seeking for funds for food. But we recognize that those projects sometimes still are really intertwined with at least some need for food. So if that is the case and it's absolutely necessary, an applicant can request up to 10% of the budget for food, or this also applies to other consumable supplies, because again, we're looking for longer term investments. So some examples of this, maybe you are putting on a community education project and it's going to be long training days, or you're doing, volunteer work out at, say, a local farm or something like that. It would make sense that people are going to need, maybe electrolytes and a meal for that day, or snacks, anything like that. So there is a little bit of wiggle room to acknowledge that that is sometimes a part of a bigger project. For funding amounts, it depends on if you are applying as an individual organization or if you're formally collaborating with one or more organization. So if you are applying as an individual group, you can request up to $20,000 on your application. If you are submitting a collaborative application, it does take some more work. I would recommend putting aside more time for that, because you do need to demonstrate how the collaboration will happen. You'll also need to submit letters of commitment between the collaborative parties, and evaluators on the application are really going to be looking to you on your application to understand how is this project maximized by you two working together? So, what are you doing together that you would not be able to do individually? And also, how are those responsibilities sort of shared or split up? So, for collaborative proposals, we are trying to encourage collaboration because we're all working in a Southern Arizona network here, and you can request up to $50,000. In terms of the process timeline, we are accepting applications starting next week, 9 a.m. on Wednesday, October 8th. We will be accepting them through 6 p.m. on December 10th, so second Wednesday of October to second Wednesday of December. Um, if you submit, please keep checking your email just in case we need more information from you. Sometimes we won't be able to open an attachment, or maybe there's an incomplete area of the application, and we don't want you to spend all that time submitting and then for us not to be able to process because we can't see something or it's not quite complete. Then, after a period where about 30 staff from different departments, levels of the organization, different roles in the organization come together to evaluate who will be awarded, we will be letting all applicants know the funding decision by the end of March in 2026. It's coming soon. So it's a springtime decision. We will also send out funds to those who are awarded by the end of April. And for additional timeline context, we grant out with the intentions of projects being completed within the year. And that is that sort of calendar begins when you get your funding. So you can expect to plan for that program running April to April if you are awarded. And then we will also have the final report to do 13 months out so that you have time to focus on wrapping up your project. You can reflect on it and then let us know how it goes. If you by chance have a current year Thriving Communities grant, they will not issue your award until you have spent the existing funds. And in addition to that confirmation, we also need to have your final report submitted on grant interface. So if you're a new applicant, this is the exact timeline. If you're an existing returning applicant, we will again wait until we sort of have that previous grant wrapped up and confirmed with you. I'm going to add one more thing. In talking about the different avenues that we have for supporting various community needs, with the changes that exclude a lot of schools from applying for the grant, we do have resources available for schools that want to do garden projects. That was the vast majority of projects that schools would apply for, and we have a school garden program. So if that is you and you would like to be connected with that program, you can reach out to this email and we're happy to get you set up there. Again, similar to partnering on food with the food security team, this is just how we are best able to utilize our resources with the capacity that we have and really make sure that you have support. And in some ways, actually, if you are a school looking for a garden, it may be less work and provide more support to rather than getting a grant and sort of doing things on your own, be connected with the school garden program. They can provide training resources. We to all community members have free gardening seeds available. at the food bank, and so on. So that is an extra aside. And now I am really eager to hear what additional questions folks are having. If you think of something later on, again, please feel free to email partner grants or call the number on the screen. And let's see, I'm going to keep screen sharing so that if we need to go back to a slide, we can. So my colleague Emmanuel is helping me to keep an eye on the chat and let me know if things are coming up. And also just feel free to come off of mute and ask your question since I may not see if you're raising your hand.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, I printed a copy of the application from your website, and I noticed the verbiage differs just a little bit. But one thing I wanted to ask about is it mentions on the online application something about a $5,000 grant with fewer reporting requirements, less extensive application and reporting process. So is that an option there in terms of reporting? There's the lesser 5,000, and then if you want more than 5,000, there are additional reporting requirements.
Yes, that's correct. And so it's all the same application, but you'll
Mhm.
notice that some sections of the application say you only need to fill this out if you're asking for over
Okay.
5,000. And yes, the language has changed slightly
Yeah.
from we every year sort of make updates based on feedback and where our resources and priorities as an organization are. So we're working on getting everything updated on the website. If you go onto, or when you go onto grants interface on Wednesday, you'll see that slightly updated version. But
Okay.
yeah, so it's not a separate grant, and for anyone applying, there, you should ask for the true amount of resources that you need within those parameters. So, an individual applicant can ask for up to 20,000, but if your project can be accomplished really thoroughly with 10 or whatever variation, same thing for the collaborative projects. And then, yeah, we just want to recognize that for under $5,000, it's less funding, and therefore we feel it's only fair that there are slightly less reporting requirements and details needed on the application.
Very good. And then I have a question about one of the examples you gave of a food organization in Cochise County. This is the one that is strengthening the local food system. What is
Mm-hmm.
the name of that organization?
They're called the local co-op, and they're in McNeil, Arizona.
Oh, McNeil. Wow, that is
Mm-hmm.
out there.
Yeah, yeah.
I went ahead and shared the link on the chat in case you want to check them out, Nancy.
Okay,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Manuel. And those are my questions. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you, Nancy. Other questions? Is there anything coming up in the chat, Emma?
No, just Nancy's question that you've already answered.
Okay. All right. I always like to give a little extra pause in case anyone's feeling shy about a question. But if nothing else is coming up, please know we are here to help anytime. We love answering questions. We appreciate your thoughtful questions. We also have a frequently asked questions document that will be updated again by the start of application. So it'll be updated on our website by this coming Wednesday, so that can be a really helpful resource. But please never hesitate to reach out and ask questions or consult with us on anything that might be helpful for you. So I'll stop sharing the slides. And if there are no further questions, I wish everyone a happy day and thank you so much for attending.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.